Good morning. Today is Monday, March 23rd. So I did this video for you all on today just to help you out as you go through the lessons with students. And so I did a video, I have pictures, I did voiceovers pretty much for every subject that we will cover on today. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first lesson of the day is Bible. And so usually when we come in, the first thing we do is we pray, and then we will go over the catechisms, which I will send a picture of those if you wanted to practice those at home. We practice our memory scripture of the week. We review it, we discuss it, and we talk about what the scripture means. We review our books of the Bible. Students do know all 66 books, and so this is really important for them to know, especially when it comes to finding scriptures, knowing how to identify and find certain books of the Bible. So if I say find Jeremiah, they'll know what Jeremiah is by Isaiah and Lamentations. So anyway, so if you do want to do all of that, you are free to do that just to kind of enhance the Bible lesson. We also do a sword drill where we practice finding scriptures. So I will usually give them a scripture. If I'll say find Psalms 94, and so they'll go through it and they'll find it and then they read it. So that is something fun to do at home for students as well. So after we complete all these different things before we get into our lesson, we go into our Bible lesson. So this week we are doing, today in particular, talking about Jesus and the 10 lepers, and Jesus and he healed the man of leprosy. And so in the Bible, leprosy was a disease that people would have. It was a contagious disease. It was a terrible disease. You did not want to catch leprosy. Lepers usually had to go and live alone by themselves in seclusion. It was just a sad life that they lived. But thank God that we have Jesus who can cure us and heal us from any type of disease, any type of sickness, and that though man may say that we cannot be healed, Jesus will come and heal us. And so that is what the lesson is on today. So you could go ahead and read the lessons. So one is in Matthew and one is in Luke. Talk about it and discuss it. I'm sure students will enjoy discussing the word of God. After Bible, we move on to math. So today's lesson is lesson 126. So you could kind of watch the video of the lesson and do a little practice. And then after that, students can work in the workbook, which is page 126A. It will be 2 pages. It will have a facts page that they can work on, and then it will have a work page that they work on. So today's math lesson is lesson 126, and the main core of the lesson is learning how to count quarters. But before we go into counting quarters, I wanted to kind of review the other coins that we've learned so far. So the first coin that we have learned was pennies, and I always tell students it's easy to identify a penny because it's a brown coin. Abraham Lincoln is facing the opposite way from the other coins, and if it's turned over to the back, it always will tell you how much the coin is worth, which it tells you on the bottom. It says 1 cent. The next coin we learned were dimes, which are the smaller coins out of all the coins. Once again, dimes are worth 10 cents. You count by tens whenever you have dimes. And just like on the penny, if you go to the back of it, it tells you exactly what coin it is. And if you know that a dime is worth 10 cents, then you'll know exactly how to count it. The next coin that we learned were nickels, which are the bigger coins out of the other two that we've learned. Quarters are bigger than nickels, but compared to dimes and pennies, nickels are bigger than them. Nickels are worth a total of 5 cents, and if it's to the back, it'll tell you exactly how much it's worth, which is a total of 5. You count by fives whenever you have nickels. The next coin that we'll be learning is called the quarter. And so as you could see, once again, the front of the quarter and then the back of the quarter, it tells you that it's a $quarter. All quarters are worth a total of 25 cents. So whenever you have quarters, you count by 25s. It's very easy to count by 25 if you can recognize and memorize the pattern. And so I have an example of a pattern going all the way to $2. So of course we start with 25 and then we go to 50, 75, and then $1. Once you get in your $1, you just start that pattern all over again. $1.25, $1.50, $1.75, $2, and then you finish the pattern for me, going all the way to $3. I would say, so here is a video / picture of all 4 coins. You have the pennies that are brown on the left, then you have the dimes, then you have the nickels, and then you have quarters. As you can see, quarters are bigger than all of the coins, so they should be easy to identify. They are easy to count. Remember, the pattern is 25, 50, 75, then you go to the next dollar, and you continue that pattern on in every dollar that you go in, whether it's $3, $4, $5, you continue the 25, 50, 75. Next dollar pattern. I hope this helps. Okay, so now that I have shown all 4 coins to students, I would like to try to practice, just a review of counting all the coins together. The students are pretty familiar with this. We've done it in class. How I usually do it, if you look at the picture, is I will write the amounts on the board. So like number 1 says 4D and 6P. What that means is 4 dimes and 6 pennies. And so I'll usually give students a little index card, or loose leaf paper is fine, and they draw it out. So what they do is they put their circles. And so for the 4Ds, they would put 4 10s inside of each circle. Like 4 circles would have a 10, 10, 10, 10. And then with the other 6 circles, they would put a 1 because those are worth pennies. And then they combine it and they count it together. So they are pretty familiar with this. They do know how to do this. So you could just take a little bit of time before you get to the workbook page and just practice counting out the coins. So our next lesson that we will be moving on to is handwriting, or writing as we call it in class. So just before we get started on the lesson, I just want to review a couple of rules that students have to make sure to follow whenever they are writing their sentences. So the very first most important rule is starting all your sentences with a capital letter and making sure that you finish all your sentences with a period. Also, remember, whenever we run across any type of proper noun, we capitalize it in a sentence. Proper nouns like names of people, whether it be their first name or their last name, the names of a city or a state. And remember, when we write a city and a state together, we put a comma between them. We also capitalize proper names of places, like if we would say Walmart, or if we would say Target, if we would say Chili's, IHOP. We also make sure to capitalize the days of the week when we write them, the months of the year whenever we write them. And also remember, when you're writing your initials, you capitalize your initials and you put a dot after each letter. And when you abbreviate the months of the year, you write just the first 3 letters of the month, you capitalize it, and you put a dot after it. So this week is week 26 inside of the student's writing book. So this week our story is coming out of the book The Tale of Benjamin Bunny by Beatrix Potter. So this week we will focus on abbreviating titles of respect. And if you look at the sentences on the page, they contain titles of respect. So the top sentence says, "From here they looked down into the garden of Mr. McGregor." So Mr. in that sentence is what we call a title of respect. So the second sentence says, "The gig was driven by Mr. McGregor, and beside him sat Mrs. McGregor in her best bonnet." So if you look at that sentence, Mr. is also a title of respect, like the first sentence, and then Mrs. is a new title of respect that is in this sentence. So all students have to do is just copy the sentence, practice writing it correctly, making sure that they capitalize everything that needs to be capitalized, they have dots, and they have the proper punctuation wherever it needs to go. So if you look at the picture that is posted, these are the 5 titles of respect that we will focus on this week. So a title of respect is a title that you give to someone that you would want to show the utmost respect to, which are usually your authorities that are placed over you. So we will be learning how to abbreviate them on this week. And remember, abbreviate means a shorter way to write it, just like we did with the months whenever we had the full month written out, and then we learn how to shorten it and abbreviate it. So this week, our 5 titles of respect are Mr., a married woman, an unmarried woman, any woman, and a doctor. So the first one is Mr. If you look at MISTER, that is Mr. completely written out. But when we abbreviate it, it's a capital M, R, and then a dot. Next one is a married woman. So this is a woman who is married to someone. You refer to her as Mrs. That is capital M, R, S, dot. The next one is an unmarried woman, someone who is not married to someone. You refer to her as Miss, capital M, I, S, S, dot. The next one is any woman. You can use this for anyone, any woman. The abbreviation is capital M, S, dot. And then the last one is in reference to a doctor. We capitalize the D, R, dot. All abbreviations, when you abbreviate the titles of respect, start with a capital letter and then they finish with a dot. Now, whenever you are applying the last name of the person, because usually you refer to someone with a title of respect by their last name, you always make sure to capitalize the last name of the person. So if you would write Mrs. Flugence, you would put capital M-R-S dot. Then when you began to write my name, you put capital F, and then you write the rest of the name. So parents, what you could do is have them copy this. Next subject will be phonics. So every time when we begin our phonics lesson, we always start with our charts, which will be chart 10, chart 11, and chart 12. That will be the next charts that will be on the next slide. I did send out an email with the links to those charts on Sunday. So you should be able to pull that up if they aren't familiar with any of the sounds, that you could pull up and that they could hear it and say it with her. So usually after we finish our phonics charts, we usually do some board work, which I will put a picture of some board work that you could kind of review, orally review, or you could have them write it down. It's up to you, just to kind of get them practicing. And then after we finish that, we usually go into the workbook page. So today will be workbook page 126. I also sent a word list in the email that I sent on this morning. This word list is a word list that they can practice for the week. It'll have a lot of the sounds that you'll see on charts 10, 11, and 12, and 13 that we'll be learning today. You'll see some of those sounds in those words. And so it's just a practice. You could print it out for students, or you could have them tell you the sounds that are in the words as they read the word to you. So it's good to time them on today to see how long it takes for them to get through it, and then compare it to on Thursday. So I have put pictures of phonics charts 10, 11, and 12. And so the video will play it for a little while. It will go silent, but that's for the students to be able to go over the sounds and say the chart as they look at it. So this is Phonics Chart 13. This is a new chart that we haven't started yet. So I want to introduce this chart to students on today. And once again, I do have the YouTube links that I do suggest that you listen to, that the students listen to, so that they can become familiar with the sounds as they begin to read bigger and harder words. So I'll go through the chart. Students can repeat after me. So I'll say the sound, I'll pause so that they could say it, just like we do in class. So the first sound is F-U-L, says full, 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 and beautiful. A-R-E says air, 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 in care. T-A-I-N says ton, 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 in mountain. U-R-E says you're, in pure. T-U-R-E says chur, 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 in pasture. WAR says war, war, war in warm. TION says shun, shun, shun in nation. SION says shun, shun, shun in missionary. SION says jeune, jeune, jeune in television. EIGH says A in 8. OR says in sailor. AR says in dollar. Y says in crystal. ERR says air in cherry. So today's phonics lesson will be on a new rule that we will learn whenever adding suffixes to a word. So suffixes go to the end of root words, which is the word that is a word by itself. And then when you add a suffix, it makes it into a whole new word. So for example, if I have the word point and I add suffix ing, it becomes pointing. So we've already learned how to apply a suffix to a word. We also learned some rules already. So for example, we've learned that if you look at the top word, that if a word has a sharp vowel, which is that O and stop, and it ends with a consonant, which is the P, we double the consonant before we add the suffix ed. And we've also learned the rule that if our word has a long vowel and it ends with a silent E, like in bake, we drop the E off and then we add the suffix er, which makes the word baker. So today's lesson will be on changing y into an I and then adding your suffix. Some root words will end with a y, but before you add your suffix to it, you have to take off the y and then you change it into an I. So I have the word sleepy, for example. I took off my y to add er and it became sleepier. Then I have the word dusty. I took off the y and then I added I to make it dustier. And then I have the word dreamy, where I took off the y, I changed it into an I and it became dreamier. And then on the last one, I added est. I have the word frosty. I took off the y, changed it to an I, and added est. So whenever you have a root word that ends with the letter y, you drop the y and then you change it to an I, and then you add your suffix. So in the workbook page, you'll probably see practice with that on today. If it's not today, it will definitely be on tomorrow. In language, we have been learning the different types of sentences, how to identify each one. We started off with the top paper, which is a phrase, which is actually not a sentence. It is a part of a sentence. A phrase doesn't tell you the who and the what of a sentence. It only tells you either or. So we learned how to identify a phrase, and then we learned about statement sentences, which is the middle paper, which a statement sentence is a complete sentence, a full sentence. It will actually tell you something, and it will give you information. You know the who and you know the what of the sentence. And then last week we learned about the question sentence, which is a sentence that will ask you something. So all these types of sentences besides phrases start with a capital letter, statements end with a period, but questions will end with a question mark. Usually whenever you have a question sentence, you are asking someone something, so therefore it will require a response. That's how you know the difference between a statement and a question. This lesson is on a command sentence. So a command sentence is a sentence that gives an order or makes a request. The example I have on the paper is get off the table. A command sentence starts with a capital letter and it ends with a period. You are able to identify a command sentence because whenever the sentence is spoken, it usually requires you to do some type of order. Like if your parent would say clean your room, or if someone would say stand up, or if someone would say raise your hand. All of these require you to do something, so it is called a command sentence. So this week's spelling list is list 25. So this spelling list is kind of like last week's, where you are adding suffixes to words. This week it will focus on dropping the silent E and adding the suffix to a word. And so there will be a total of 20 words on this week. You will have the words that are in the workbook, and then you will have the Greek and Latin, which I will have in the next slide. So these are the Greek and Latin words that students will focus on this week, along with list 25. So the first three words are our Latin words, and then the last two are the Greek words. So the first word is dormio, which is a Latin word, and it means sleep. A word that we get from the word dormio would be dormant. Next is annus, which means year. A word that we get from the Latin word annus would be annual. Next is stella, which means star. A word that we would get from the Latin word stella would be constellation. The next two words are the Greek words. So the first one is pathos, which means feeling. A word we get from pathos would be sympathetic. Next is autos, and it means self, and a word that we get from the Greek word autos is automobile. I don't require students to tell me what words we can make from the Greek and Latin words. I just like to show it to them so that they could see that these Greek and Latin derivative root words actually form words that we use today. So whenever you write your spelling words, make sure to include your Greek and Latin with them as well. So this week in social studies, we are continuing our world tour. Last week, you visited the Netherlands, which is also called Holland, and you also visited Norway. So we are still in the continent of Europe, and this week we will move on to Germany and Italy. So if you look at the map that I have a picture of, Germany is the green part of the map. It's spelled Germany. And then if you go down to the south, the pink is Italy. And Italy is actually shaped like a boot, if you look at it really good. And so that's the two countries we will be visiting on this week. So you can just go ahead and read the workbook pages on each country, and the test will be on Friday, and it will have questions from what was in the workbook. This week in science, students will learn about the 4 seasons of the year. The 4 seasons are winter, spring, summer, and fall. They will also learn what months are inside of each season, which they will need to know for their test on Friday. So this week in particular, they will introduce the 4 seasons, and then it will focus on the season of winter. In particular, it will tell you what's going on in the winter, about hibernation during the winter, and so students will need to know all of that information. So you can read it in the workbook pages, and the test is on Friday. The last lesson of the day is reading. The name of our book is Kind and Brave. Last week we did not have a reading test, but this week I will actually have a test for the students. Reading tests are done on Thursdays. Whenever I send all the tests on Thursday morning, that test will be included as well. So in class, whenever we do reading, we usually read over it twice. And as we read, I have them read it orally, and then sometimes they read to themselves silently. But it's important that you ask questions as they are reading so that you can make sure that they are comprehending, and also making sure that they are pausing at periods, that they are taking their time sounding out the words, that they are reading smooth, and that the reading is clear, and that they fully understand what they are reading. So just make sure as you do reading that you read with them. If you could, read with them to help them out, and also asking questions after the stories. And whenever, so Monday you'll read, then on Tuesday, review the story from Monday so that they can, remember as they prepare for the test for Thursday.